Is it a what?
Today is March 29th, 2003. We're at the home of Mrs. Irene Spurbeck, whose maiden name was Gardiner and who everyone calls Peggy. First of all, shall I just call you Peggy? Is that
You
what everybody
can.
calls
You can put my name, Irene, in there too if you
Okay.
want to.
I'd like to have you make a statement that this tape will belong to the Roscommon Area Historical Society.
As far as I know, they can be.
I want you to
Yeah.
go ahead and say that. This tape will belong.
This tape will belong to the Historical Society.
Roscommon
Yeah,
Area Historical.
Roscommon.
Okay. Very good. Well,
They probably goofed it up there.
that's just fine. We're not, we're not, what do I want to say? We're not being recorded by the Senate Judiciary Committee.
I hope not.
So we'll be a little bit casual. Let's start with the first, well, first of all, I should preface this by saying that you were born and raised in Roscommon, as was your parents,
Yes.
and your grandparents on the Gardiner side were not born here in Roscommon, but they lived there, and they were one of the earliest settlers.
Mm.
So let's start with their name and their story about how they came to Roscommon. That would be Julius and Julia.
Okay. I don't know the date they came to Roscommon, though.
Jim Rutledge thought that it was around 1872 when the railroad came.
This here says, well, that's the date they were born.
Yeah, he was born in 49.
And he thinks it was 1872?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, where did they come from?
Oh, he doesn't know that.
Oh, see, I don't either.
Yeah. Julia, her maiden name was Roach, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Her parents lived in Bay City at the time, but I don't know where she was born.
Oh. Well,
Does it
how
tell
come it
there?
says that she was Petersburg, Ontario? That's why I can't
okay.
understand.
Well, that's where she was born then.
How did they meet in the first place?
I don't know. We probably will never know. If you don't recall your
No, I
grandparents
don't.
talking about that. Do you recall them talking about coming to
No,
Roscommon?
because I don't remember that much about them. I remembered little bits about going to the store and stopping at my grandmother's house.
Uh-huh.
It was a big white house up there on the hill.
On what hill?
Right, Vinegar Hill, we called it.
Okay, on Fifth Street.
It was a white house,
Uh-huh.
And that's what I was going to make a little,
Like a chart.
like a map of that one street that I used to go up and down all the time when I went to the store and stuff. And I think I can remember a whole lot of names of people that lived on that road,
good. Well,
going into Roscommon.
Okay.
But
What do you remember about your grandmother as far as, was she always happy to see you? And
just made big cookies, and I'd
place to
stop there and
stop,
stop. And that's mostly what I remember. And then I remember her funeral, because I was the only one sitting in the front parlor, and she was in the what do you call it, the coffin, and I was scared to death.
Oh, my God.
I was only about 4 or 5 years old, and
Okay, so she died in...
and they had these kind of wakes, like
Uh-huh.
they had a get-together of all the family in the back room where I wasn't supposed to be, I guess.
And that was right in that same White House?
Yes.
She was laid out in her
She
home?
was in the house that she caught herself on fire in.
Oh, tell us about that.
Well, as far as I know, she got up to make a fire in the morning and caught her nightgown on fire. And my Aunt Ines, at the time, was living with them. And she heard her screech, and she went out and helped put the fire out. But they rolled her in a rug, and she had 80% burns all over her. So she died after that.
Wow.
But, that's about as much as I remember.
Mm-hmm. And she died in 1932.
Where was that?
Right there. Her death.
Oh, okay. 1932.
Okay. So that's right, you were 6 years old then.
Well, I figured 4, but
Well,
it's close, yeah.
Yeah.
That's all I remember about her. And I don't remember my grandfather that much. He must have been always gone or something.
Well, he died before you were born.
Oh, I see.
So she was a
That's
widow
it.
living there.
Oh,
Did she live
see,
by herself?
No, Aunt Ines was
Oh, she
living with
lived
her
there.
at the time,
Mhm.
because I think they had just got a divorce or something,
Oh,
her and
okay.
Jim.
Okay.
And
Okay, we'll go then from your grandparents, who were Julius Gardiner and Julia, and her maiden name was Roach,
Roach.
let's talk about their children. And the first one was,
Nellie. And I don't remember her until she was about 90 years old. And
Oh.
she'd had 2 or 3 different operations for cataracts. And we made a big thing of that for
Well,
some reason.
certainly.
But I don't remember too much about her life, you know.
If she lived to be 90,
She lived downstate someplace, I think, Nellie. Either Bay City or Detroit, maybe.
so she lived till like 1962.
Yeah. Well,
If she
so
lived to
she
be
was,
90.
yeah, she was born in 1872. Somebody
Well, you
they
had
didn't
some-
have the date of when she
Some
died.
longevity there.
Yeah, around there. I don't know for sure when she died, though.
And next was who?
Eugene.
Okay, what do you remember about Eugene Gardner?
I know he was a policeman in Detroit. And his first wife, Margaret, had George then, right? And after that, I didn't know anybody. I didn't know who he married or the kids that he had.
And he was the first child whose birth is recorded in Roscommon.
Yes. In fact, he's in this picture.
Okay. Oh, this is a
The
wonderful
boy,
picture.
the
of
boy in the middle, right there next to
young-
Gene, is his dad, Eugene.
Which one?
Okay, this is Eugene,
Oh,
and this
okay.
is his son, George.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And that's the only one I knew.
Okay.
So, then we went to Walter is next.
Okay.
You got all the dates of them.
Mhm.
Mary, I didn't know. I knew my Uncle Walt was a policeman
Where did he live then?
in Roscommon.
Oh, he was a policeman in
Mhm.
Roscommon.
And he got shot by some kid shooting at the police car, and he got a bullet lodged close to his heart, and he had to live with it. And he finally had what do you call them? Not strokes, but seizures.
Oh,
So he
really?
had to quit the police department. But
Gee,
as
then
far as I know, I never met his wife. So
Did he live out his life in Roscommon?
yes, he died there. But his death was in 1948. And Mary, I never met. So whether they got a divorce before, I was born or what, I don't know.
Could be.
And then there was John, my dad.
Okay, let's tell us about your mother and dad and their story.
My dad, John Leroy, they got down our here. But then my mother and dad, well, my dad met my mother because they went to Canada with my grandparents, my grandfather, and the boys all went with him to bring back lumber from Canada.
Oh,
And
they were buying the lumber in Canada?
for my grandfather was selling the lumber to a cabinet maker that was working in Roscommon. And that's where he was going to get the lumber. And they were on their way back, and they stopped at a Queen's Hotel in Canada, and that's where they found my mother. She was waiting on tables, and she spilled a bunch of soup in my grandfather's lap. And he had so many clothes it didn't bother him. But anyway, my Aunt Josephine at the time was taking care of my mother. She was my aunt. And she got upset with her and said she was going to punish her, that she should go back up in the hayloft where she was staying. She was sleeping in that at night. And they would lock the door at night and let her out in the morning.
Wow. She
She was only about 9, 10 years
Was
old.
this aunt older sister of your grandmother's?
No, this was, okay, Josephine.
Or your mother? Was your
My
mother-
mother's sister.
She was your mother's sister that was taking care of her.
Yep. Their parents broke up, and they left some of the children with different relatives. And she was the one that got my mother. So then she said she was going to punish her, and my dad said, don't punish her because, or my grandfather, he said, don't punish her because it didn't bother me a bit, it didn't hurt me. And she said, well, if you feel so sorry for her, take her with you. And he did. He brought her back home to Michigan.
Isn't
And
that something?
she lived with my grandparents for, I think she was 9 when they first got back, and then 15, her and my dad married.
Isn't that one? Did she become a citizen?
Gardiner.
Do you know?
As far as I know, she married a Gardiner, so that made her a citizen anyway.
I see, sure.
And
Well, that's a really neat story, isn't it?
but
Where in Canada what was that? Was that up at the Sioux?
as far as I can remember, it was Queen's Hotel in Sarnia, Michigan,
Oh, in Sarnia,
Sarnia, Canada.
Ontario. Okay.
And they talked about Canada a lot, but I don't remember too much about it.
Do you know if they went there by train?
No, they went up there with sleighs and horses.
Oh, and brought the wood back.
Yeah,
Isn't
brought that back.
something?
They said they had to
Well,
carry
it's-
guns along with them because the link was after them. And they had to go in the wintertime because that's the only way you could get across the straits. And when it was frozen over. See,
Oh,
they
so
had
they were up at the Sioux.
Yeah, they had a
They-
certain place where they went through to get to the Sioux, up to Canada.
So they wouldn't have been at Sarnia though then.
No, but that's where they picked up my mother
That's where they picked up her. That time they
on
went.
their way back.
Oh,
But, it makes me wonder, because I went up there, when my daughter-in-law took me up to show the locks and all that. And I said, how did they ever do that? And then she says, well, it had to be in the wintertime. It was. And so where they went across or anything, I don't know. But
for
But
heaven's
my dad had the sleighs for a long time that he used, and then somebody stole them.
No kidding.
So I don't know whatever happened to them after that.
So your father at that time was,
What
well,
ab-
he's 7 years older than she is, so he was like 16
Yeah,
when
maybe
they made that
16.
trip.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these boys went with him,
Isn't that something?
And this, let me see here. Now, Bernice, this has to be Bernice way over here. That would have been Jim Rutledge's mother. And this is Nell.
If it's okay with you, I'll get a copy of that picture and bring it
Yeah.
back to you, okay?
You either bring it back or send it to me.
Well, I'll bring it. I don't trust the mail.
You don't trust the mail. Okay. And what was we talking about now? We got to
Well, we were.
my
we-
mother and dad.
Your mother and dad. So did they stay in Roscommon then?
Yes.
Okay.
And they bought a house. That would be the house that was across from this one here, Phillips.
Okay.
And they had a house that looked an awful lot like that, only my dad enclosed it with, what do you
Was
call
that
it?
near where your grandmother's house was then?
This house is on the street that my grandmother's house was. My dad's house was here, and we had to go across the street.
So it was on the same street, but across the street?
Yeah, across the street on
Is
that
that
same.
home still in Roscommon?
I don't
do you
think
know?
so. We went through there. My son and I, when I had to go downstate, my sister's husband died, and we went down and we stopped, went looking around, and we couldn't find half of the stuff that we'd seen before,
Oh,
And the house was gone.
It's
So,
changed a lot there.
yeah.
So your father, did he continue to work in wood all his life?
No, he was in the highway department.
Oh,
Well, at first he went, I seen that someplace, highway department, but there was 2 different highways departments there at the time. It was a public works or something. He worked there, and he only had a 3rd grade education.
really?
And he run that place for a long time. And then he moved to the highway department. And in fact, after he retired at 75, he went back and worked the night shift to be a police, what do you call it? A guard or something for
Security guard?
Security guard. And he only worked for a year or so, and then he had to quit because he was 75.
Oh, for heaven's
And he
sake.
was having problems, so. But then my brother worked for the highway department too, and he drove a truck,
Which brother was
snowplow.
that?
Howard.
Howard, okay. Okay, before we go to your brothers and sisters, let's keep going with your father's brothers and sisters, because we came down to John. We did Nellie and Eugene and Walter and John. And so the next one is,
Oh boy, who do we have?
Clyde.
Clyde.
Yeah. What do you remember? Do you remember Clyde?
Oh, yeah. He lived with Uncle Bill in a little house that Bernice Rutledge built him.
Oh.
And she built him. I don't think that place is there either. It was in between Cousin Oz and the Hendersons on the corner. It was in...
Still on the same street?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, on the side of the street that my dad's house was on, going down to the left.
Do you remember the name of that street? Was that George?
No,
George
it
Street or farther up?
would be the same street that my grandparents lived on.
That was Fifth
It
Street.
was, is it?
The main street that go to St. Helen?
Yes,
Mhm,
that's what they
that's
call
Fifth
Fifth
Street.
Street. Okay, what's the one behind it then?
Going up towards the Congregational Church is Main,
Oh, yeah, that isn't where I am though.
or going the other way, then it would be Fourth Street.
Okay, that's where my brother lived, behind my dad's house.
Okay,
He built a
on
house
4th
there.
Okay.
And as far as I know, Judy is still there. That would be Howard,
Oh, okay.
Howard's grandchild.
Right, okay.
She's
But
still
your
there.
uncle, Clyde,
Clyde,
and Bill lived together.
yeah, they
you
lived
said.
together, and Uncle Bill, as far as I know, Uncle Clyde wasn't working when I was little, anyway.
Mhm.
I don't know what he done. I think he just took care of the house for Uncle Bill.
Okay.
And Bill worked for the highway department, same as my dad. I don't know whether he drove a truck or not, but I think he worked there anyway.
Mhm.
And I don't know too much about him.
Clyde comes next, and then Bill, and then...
Then Bill is the
Okay,
one,
and we should say Clyde and Bill were not married.
as far as I know. Bernice is next,
Okay.
and she married Homer Rutledge. Wait a minute now.
That's correct.
No, she was married once before that.
Oh, okay.
Who was it? Shoot. Gotta have it someplace.
Did she live all her life in Roscommon?
She was married to, I'm trying to think of the name of the guy. Didn't he have anything wrote down about that? She was married, but I can't think of the name.
Okay, and then after, and she stayed in Roscommon, you said also.
As far as I know, yes.
And then the last child was,
James.
okay. Did he live in Roscommon?
Yeah, and he was also a policeman. And when he married Ines, and then they got a divorce, and he married Kylie, and she worked at the courthouse. In fact, she sold me my first driver's license.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
Her name was signed on it. In fact, I think my daughter took a picture of that too.
Uh-huh.
But outside of that, you know, I told you about the children, Doris and Virginia.
Okay, and they were daughters
Ines
of
is.
Ines.
Mhm.
And then when he was married to Edith, were there more children?
No.
Okay. And there was a son named Bill Gardiner.
Not a son of Doris Gardner's son.
Oh, that's right, that was the daughter's son, that's a grandson to
Mhm.
Jen. Okay, and he died in World War II.
As far as I know, I don't know about Doris and Virginia, whether they're still alive or not. But
Okay.
I know Doris had cancer, so she might not be alive. But now what are we getting into?
Okay, well, now let's hear a little bit about your brothers and sisters and your growing up in Roscommon. Actually, it says your oldest brother was born in Houghton Lake, right?
Howard?
Russell.
I think,
No, Russell.
oh,
Oh,
Russell.
who's the oldest one?
Howard's the oldest.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
They have got them all wrong here. Howard they got right, though.
Okay, Howard is the oldest. Okay.
A lot of them might have been born in Houghton Lake, you know, but I don't
How
remember
did they
back.
happen to go to Houghton Lake? Do you know?
How did he happen to go?
I mean, you said that your
I think he
parents
was
moved-
born there.
your parents moved to Houghton Lake.
As far as I know, they could have been living in Houghton Lake after my dad left the Gardiner family, you know, after he got married.
Oh, okay.
And they lived in Houghton Lake until their house burnt down. and then they came back to Roscommon and bought a house there. That's the house they bought across from there.
Your mother and dad?
Mhm.
Okay.
Howard and Dorothy, then they built a house behind my dad's house on a different street. And that would be the one you were saying was behind my dad's. That would be 4th Street.
4th Street. Mhm.
That's where he lived. And he had, oh, what did I say? How many kids? It was Dick, Ruth, Sally, and what was the other one? That's it.
Okay.
No, wait a minute. Sally, Ruth, Dick. I'm stuck. There has to be another one. Did I say another one there?
No.
Sally?
Mm-mm.
No?
Just Ruth
I know they
and
lost
Richard
one.
and
They
Sally.
lost one. She was pregnant with a baby and she got dragged by a cow, so she lost that baby.
gee.
But as far as I know, that's yeah. Oh, Julia. That's who it was.
Okay.
I knew there was another one. And she lives in Indiana now.
Did they have a cow
They had
right
a
at their
cow.
home there for,
Mhm.
for their own milk?
My dad and my brother Howard went together and got a cow, and that's where we had milk. And they separated their milk in their in a shed they had behind the house.
Did you ever have to milk the cow?
No, no, no. I was afraid of that cow after Dorothy got dragged by him.
Sure.
They had to go and get him, every night and bring him up to the house.
Where was he?
He was out in the field someplace, and but she shouldn't have been doing it because my Uncle Howard told him, my brother Howard told her not to go monkeying with a cow. He'd bring it in when he came back from work, but she had to do it, She's one of these people that had to do everything right away. But that's Howard. And
Mhm.
so they would have had, 5 children altogether if the baby had lived. But what else did you want me?
Okay, well then, Howard was the oldest. Who was next?
As far as I know, it was Russell, I think, is the next.
Okay.
They've got him down here wrong, but Russell. He went to school and graduated from Roscommon and all that, I guess. Went to Detroit after he graduated and became a policeman
Oh.
in Detroit. And then when he retired from the police force, well, he married Emma, and they had Emma Fitzpatrick. She was from West Branch.
Okay.
And they had 2 children, Jim and Jeannie.
Oh no, I have Russell Gardiner. Emma Fitzpatrick.
He had Emma, and Emma was his first wife.
Okay.
And his second wife was probably where you got Rusty and Ricky from.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
And,
What was her maiden name? Do you remember?
oh boy, now I'm stuck. No, it was, shoot. Got all kinds of pictures of her in there too, and I can't think of her name right now.
That's okay.
Okay. But they divorced too, and he lived the rest of his life out by the river on 144.
Oh, did
He had a place right down on the river, bank of the, Au Sable probably.
Uh-huh.
And that's where he raised his 2 boys from there. And then they had a set of twins, but the twins died.
Oh.
And why can't I think of her name?
That's okay.
Okay, who did it? We said Russell. That was Russell. We done Howard and Russell. Then my sister Ethel was born, and she married Kenneth Kiley.
Did she stay in Roscommon?
Yes. In fact, she worked for a telephone operator right there on the main street.
Oh.
And then they shut it down. I don't know why, but they stopped doing it. And she didn't work too very much in her life, but outside of going with the doctor as a midwife.
Oh, that
She
had to
went
be
with
interesting.
Dr. Shoot, what was his name? I can't remember his name either. But doctor that we went to all the time. I can't remember.
Cornelia?
No.
Marzoka?
Cornelia probably brought me into the world.
Uh-huh.
Mark Zoka, that's the one I couldn't remember. He's the one that took me to get my tonsils out.
Oh,
He
okay.
lived right on that main street, too.
Is that the one she midwife?
No, he was down on the other road going out 144, Hammond.
Hammond?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
She went with him. And,
Did
of
she
course,
have her own family?
yes, Kenneth Kelly was jealous, so she had to quit doing that.
Oh, that happens too, doesn't it?
She brought one of my babies into the world.
Did she really?
My second baby. And
That has
my
to be
second
neat to have
baby
a family.
died. My second baby died
Oh.
because I had it at home, but her valve wouldn't close in her heart. So,
Oh, so they couldn't have.
and she
saved her.
weighed 11 pounds and something.
Oh my gosh.
But anyway, her and Kenneth, she died before Kenneth. I don't know. She had a lot of problems. But she never went. She went to the hospital and had an operation on her back. Said she would never go back because she had to go downstate to go to the hospital. And Kenneth and Ethel. As far as I know, he's dead. So she died when I was in Minnesota at the time. So I didn't get back to her funeral.
That has to be hard when you lose
Yeah.
a sister.
Yeah. So anyway, that was, what did they say? Kylie.
Okay, who came after Ethel?
Okay, we had Howard,
Howard,
Russell,
and Ethel.
and Ethel. And then probably Walter. Walter married somebody by the name of Goldie, but I don't remember her last name. And
What did he do?
he just done odd jobs, I guess, and he unloaded coal off the trains and stuff that came in there, and done a lot of odd jobs, different things.
Did they all graduate from high school?
As far as I know, they did, but I don't know for sure. But I know my dad didn't, but I don't know about Walter.
But the kids probably did.
Yes,
Your brothers and
I
sisters.
really don't know. And, Walter, and they had at least 4 or 5 children, and my dad had them taken away from them because they weren't taking care of them right. So they got adopted out. And the first one I remember was Judy. And that was why my dad had him taken away, because she pushed her against the wall or something, and the girl was unconscious for quite a while. The first one she wanted was my grandfather, my dad, her grandfather.
Her grandfather.
And but after that, he found them a couple times that were dirty and sleeping in beds that were flies all over and everything. He couldn't take that, so he had them taken away. But okay, Walter, and then we got. Okay, I got Howard, Russell. Who else? Okay, I done
You
it.
just have Beatrice left.
Okay,
And then you.
Beatrice and
Was Beatrice next older to you?
yes,
Oh, no, I missed somebody.
yeah.
Wait, there's one more somebody. Oh, there's someone else who moved to Texas. Who was that?
Oh, Julius. He was named after his grandfather. Yeah. And he married somebody by the name of Edith, but I don't remember her last name. I lived with them for a while too.
Oh.
And when
You lived in
I went to Rochester, Michigan, where they were living. He was a guard at the tank division in how was it? Detroit. He had to drive from Rochester to Detroit to work. And they never had any children. but he got married after she died to a woman named Sue. And they had they had 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. The only ones I can remember is John and I don't remember the other boy's name. What was it? It had something to do with the song anyway. I can't remember.
Danny Boy or something?
Danny.
Yeah.
Danny. It was
Was
Danny.
it?
Uh-huh. And, but I don't remember the girls' names. We lived with them for a while. When I first went to Texas with Pete Ory, and we lived there for a long time for 2 years, until Pete's dad died. My son's died. And he died in Texas. And he was from West Branch. So Beatrice married a Chance, Larry Chance, and she had 1 son and 1 daughter by him. She had Barbara and Jim Chance. And then she got married again later to Fred Pearson. She's got it wrong in here.
Did you have children with Mr. Pearson?
Yes, just 1. And her name is Debbie. She's got Frederick Pierce here. And his name, I never heard him called anything but Fred. Pierson, Pearson. They got Pierce here. And then me, of course.
Yes, now we want to hear your story.
My life is really something.
Well, we want to hear about the early part when you were
Okay, she's got that I married Michael Aldridge, but his name was Myron. But they did call him Mike.
Oh, I see.
She's got down here Michael Aldridge, and that was one of my sons. Well, Myron was from Rochester. I met him when I went down to my brother's Julius's and lived, and I picked strawberries for a long time. Then I went to work in a restaurant.
Now, was this after you graduated from high school?
Yes, and
So,
well, I didn't graduate. I went to the 9th grade,
oh, okay.
and I quit and went to. Well, I just went down there for a summer and ended up meeting somebody and marrying him.
Oh,
So-
that's what happened. So, how were you quite young when you got married?
I was 18. I got
that's
married.
not too young.
No, but I did. I worked there with Julius and his wife for close to 2 years. And
Well, what do you remember about your early years in Roscommon? Then,
well, let me see.
what was the school like for you?
I liked it, but my mother was sick a lot, and I was home with her an awful lot. I took care of her because she couldn't get out of bed. And my sister, of course, wouldn't do it. She didn't like to be around people who were sick, I guess. But and she didn't care to go to school. But I wanted to go to school, and I had to stay and take care of my mother.
Oh, dear.
And-
So you gave up going to school to take
Yeah.
care of your mother initially?
Yep, mostly. And then when I finally left there, my mother was living with Walter and Goldie. They moved into my dad's house. They were there. And I figured they'd be all right, you know, because she had somebody to help take care of her at that
Sure.
time. But of course, Goldie was mean with my mother. And my mother got pneumonia at once. When I came home one time when my husband and I were having problems, and I stayed there for a long time, and my mother finally died of pneumonia.
Oh.
She got pneumonia and died. Then I moved, and right from there, I stayed in Roscommon. And married, you know, I was married at the time. We lived there, and my husband, Byron, worked for the lumber yard. What was the name of that lumber yard?
LaRocque's or Blanchard's?
No, out 144.
Oh. Way out from Mr. Legg?
Legs.
Okay.
It was a lumber yard.
Mhm.
Anyway, he worked for him as a sawyer, and his mother died in Rochester after that. He didn't care. Seemed like he didn't care anymore. And him and I got a divorce, and he went back down to Rochester. But we already had, you see, we had at least 5 kids by that time.
Okay, you want to just rattle off their names?
Okay. I have to go back to this thing. I can't remember my own kids even. That's not it. Okay. Where did she have all that? Okay, I had John.
I think you told me these. John and Joseph,
Yeah,
Janet,
Janet.
Sanford, and Michael.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yes, and then Pete.
Pete was from your
Pete was from
second
his second husband, though.
Mr. Alry.
Yeah. But anyway, I lived and took care of my kids. That was before Ari, and worked for Jess Green. I worked in the Hotel Colonial. I worked in, there was another bar going out towards Higgins Lake. They call it the Tavern of the Town.
Oh, okay, sure.
And it was a restaurant on one side. I worked in both places as far as that goes. I worked in the restaurant until it almost closed down. Then
And
I
who
worked.
were you working for at that?
I don't know who owned it. I can't remember. But they tore it down, and I think it was a lawyer's office. Maybe even Rutledge was in it. But I can't remember.
Well, the building that was Talk of the Town, Tavern, is still
Tavern.
there.
Is it?
Yeah, that's still there.
Is it still run?
No,
Oh.
it is not a restaurant, but the building itself is still there. It's offices now.
Yeah, I worked in the dining room and in the bar, both at the Hotel Colonial. Is that gone?
No, the building is still there
Oh.
also, but it's apartments now.
Oh, I see.
You probably knew everyone in town.
Yeah, who was it? 2 doors in Virginia. Virginia was a hairdresser in the back end of the Hotel Colonial. She had
Oh,
a beauty parlor there. Yeah, I know a lot of people, but the more I talk, the more I think about somebody else. You know, it's confusing me.
So were you, when you worked at the Colonial,
I lived in Knapp's old family home, and his wife died, and he built another smaller home next to it. And that's the one that Rutledge lived in for a long time, Jim Rutledge.
okay,
He was just becoming a probate judge at the time. He was a lawyer. He's the one you've been talking to, Jim Rutledge.
I don't know where he lived.
He lived in a Knapp's house. It used to be, Mr. Knapp's probably dead and everything by now, but we got our marriage license from him. And I lived in one side of the house. They made 2 apartments out of it. And I lived in one side with my kids. And then I ended up moving in the smaller one because it was cheaper, because I wasn't making much money.
Remember what street that was on?
Well, it was close to the Congregational Church, was down a ways from there. But in fact, the one that Jim married, who was their name?
Helen.
Helen, what's their last names?
Her name was Helen Jean Richardson. Her name
Okay,
is-
they lived on the corner
Oh, okay, on the same
on
street.
the
That's
same
6th
street, yeah.
Okay, that's 6th
And then
Street.
going that way, Kylie had judge of probate close to the river.
Mhm.
So,
I live in that house.
do you?
Mhm.
That was a big house.
Yeah, it was a wonderful
Uh-huh.
house. So you were on the side street there in Knapp's house then?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay.
And that was what street did you say it was?
6th.
Sixth. Wow. See, all they ever done was write your name on it, and we'd go to the
Sure.
post office. We never had street numbers
You
on
always
our
had a post
envelopes.
office box,
Yeah.
sure.
But
So
anyway,
you stayed in Roscommon quite a while then?
yeah,
Did
until
your children start school there?
oh yes, they all went to school there
Mhm.
until they didn't graduate there though. They graduated here, most of them. Or no, Mike. Mike didn't graduate there. Roscommon. I think
Okay, well, let's keep going with you.
Okay.
So then you married Mr. Alry
yes,
and left
I had,
Roscommon.
I had one child. His name is Pete too.
Oh,
And then he died in Texas, and he had cancer. Died in Texas. Then I moved back to
and the
Michigan.
baby, where were you when the baby died?
The baby didn't die.
Oh, I thought he died as an
No.
infant.
Well, I did have a baby when I came back. That I was pregnant at the time, and I came back and I lost the baby. Maybe
Okay.
that's what somebody gave you that
Yeah,
information.
okay.
And Pete, no, he runs a 7-Eleven here in town.
Okay.
And then his dad was from West Branch. And then
Mr. Alridge's dad, you mean?
yes.
Mhm.
And then I married Dwayne.
So after he died, you came back to Roscommon? After Pete died?
Oh, yes. And I lived there for a while in the house close to my brother Howard's. Can't think of the name. It was one of his sister-in-law's house that they'd left town, and I rented that house. And after that, I married Dwayne, and we went.
Dwayne Spurbeck.
Yeah, we stayed in town for quite a while, and then we went to Minnesota, where I had Karen.
Oh, okay.
Karen, and Diane was next, then Cheryl, and Christine.
4 girls in Minnesota. Huh?
Yep.
Well, that was
That was
a
it.
pretty good spot. What did Mr. Spurbeck do when you
He
lived
was
in
a
Roscommon?
mechanic,
Oh.
and he was a mechanic in Minnesota too.
Mm.
Well, he worked.
On cars, you mean?
Yeah, we lived in Frederick too. I forgot about that for a while, and he was with the fire department. And
So when you came back and married Mr. Spurbeck, then your children were going to the Roscommon schools.
yes,
Your John and Joseph
yeah,
and Janet.
but they didn't graduate there.
Okay, because you went on to Minnesota. Well, you've been a busy girl.
Yeah, I was all over the place. So, and when you come down to it, it's so hard to remember different dates and
Why,
stuff. And
sure
somebody will
is.
say, how long did you live there?
Yeah.
I don't remember
Sure.
because I
Well,
moved so
tell-
much.
See, now we have gone through the family. Now tell us a little bit about, you were wanting to walk down Fifth Street from your...
Oh, why can I make a small little?
Sure, let's
Well, I
make a little
can't do it.
sketch.
It's gonna. I can think about it when I'm doing it. But then
Mhm.
again, when
In your
somebody's
mind.
talking to me, I probably goofed up.
That's okay. We'll just kind of let you...
Oh,
You want to write as you thinking it out? Think that'll work?
so what I was thinking of this being the road from this
Okay.
is St. Helens,
See if I can follow.
H-E-L-E-N. Helens is down this road. What was that? 72,
76.
76.
And it's Fifth Street. It's M76. and that's Fifth Street.
F-I-F-T-H, Fifth. Okay, then there was a railroad track over here.
That's right.
That was the railroad track there.
And that's still there.
And from here, I think there was a gas station that was run by, oh shoot, who? Maybe I can come back to that. I
Okay.
can't think of it. And there was a road that went across here, across the railroad track. And went up that way where the highway department was.
Okay, I think that's where our county fairgrounds is now.
Oh. Anyway, that's where I remember my uncles and my dad and everybody coming back from work, going
Sure.
across that railroad track.
I think
Okay.
that's Ballinger. Does that sound familiar? Ballinger Street?
I don't remember that. I remember the name of Ballinger, but I don't know whether they named a street after it.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Let's see. There's a gas station here. And this would be Phillips's. There was a field here. Phillips's. P-H-I-L-L-P-S. I'm not sure how to spell that. Phillips's house. And across the street here would be my dad's house, John. Gardner's. And this side. Okay, Phillips. There was a house in here. Who was that? McCready. Cready. I'm not sure how to spell that. McCready. And what is it? Julius. That's where their house was. White. It was a white house. That's all I can remember. Okay. And this was called Vinegar Hill. Anyway,
Do you ever know why it was called that?
somebody said they spilled vinegar up there. I don't know. Yeah. Okay, Julius. And then there was a small little house here that I think Aunt Bernice built after my grandparents died.
Oh,
There was a small place there, and I remember they rented it out to somebody, but I'm not sure who. And then down over the hill, I think it was Murphy's. Murphy's, I think. And the next house would be, oh, shit.
Are you almost to the creek there?
No, not quite. Creek is way down here.
I'm just going to write in here the house that Bernice built.
What was that?
The house that your Aunt Bernice built.
Oh, yeah, I'm not sure about that, but I think it was her. Because she rented it out to this other guy, so it must have belonged to her. Murphy's, Cornelius. Oh, that's not right.
That's good.
Cornelius, and then Green. Green is the next house.
Which green was that? The one that had the bar?
The one that was in this picture.
The one in that picture.
And I don't know for sure about his name, see. I don't remember.
He's the older gentleman on there.
Okay, Mr. Green. Oh, we always call him
Green.
Mr. Green. And I forgot somebody here. Green's. Oh, there's Murphy's in here someplace.
Another Murphy?
Maybe this is it. Oh, Murphy's, Cornelius, Green. Yeah, Green. That lady used to work at the Colonial Hotel, and she died. Well, we're close to the river, I think. No, wait a minute. In fact, I think Rutledge built a house here. D-G-E, Rutledge. And that would have been the one that died of sugar diabetes, I think, or something. You had his name, but I can't think of it right now. Stewart?
Oh,
Stewart.
Well, their mother and dad, but they lived closer to the...
Yeah, there was another Rutledge down further.
Yeah,
So this was close to the river here.
okay. The creek, Robinson Creek.
River. And then you go across the river. There was a funeral home. Oh, wait a minute. No, there's a funeral home, but there was the people that run the drugstore lived there. Oh. They also had
Patty's?
the bank. What was their names? Darn.
I'm trying to think too. I can't think.
Oh, who run the drugstore? DeWale. I'll get it. DeWales had that. Then after they died or moved away or whatever, they put a funeral home in there.
Oh, okay. That was later then. Huh?
Yeah. Funeral home. Okay, funeral home. Then there was a road that went across through here.
That's George Street.
Okay. Then across there, I don't know who that was, but there was a house there. And then down further, there was a doctor's, Marksoka. And another, the old family, Rutledge's probably. Bruce. And what else? Okay, Rutledge's. Then there was McConkey's. How do you spell that? C?
Onkey.
Yeah, remember him having the dry goods store. He lived over on this street, though. My son used to go to that store, and he'd tell my mother when he came back, he fell down in front of Conkey's store. I'll never forget that. But anyway, that was my oldest son. McConkey's. Then you're getting down to Main Street here, where
McCready's was there then.
McCready's, and then there was a grocery store. That was run by McCready's.
Yeah, they said that first the house, the grocery store was in front of they lived in the back part of it, and they added toward the front. And that was in the early 30s, so that must have been there when you were there.
A grocery store, McConkey's. McCready's, yeah, that's where I'm getting goofed up. McCready's. EADYS? Well, McCready's grocery store. And this would be Main Street here, then grocery store.
Now you're at Lake Street. Now you're at the corner of 5th and Lake.
Grocery store, we're going 144.
Okay, yeah.
And, road. Okay, grocery store, and I can't remember then. It had to be the restaurant. Restaurant, and what was the name of that? Bombs. B-A. In fact, I worked there too.
Did you? Did you wait table there?
Just about every restaurant in town, I think. Okay, Bombs. And then must have been the drugstore. That's where all the kids hung out. Okay, I goofed up here.
Did you hang out there too?
Yeah, the drugstore. How did I goof?
Well,
okay.
off the railroad track.
Okay. And then on the other side of that, there was Price Building.
What do you remember about the drugstore?
The drugstore? Well, I had to go there an awful lot for medicine for my mother. And they had a small little place in the back where they had an ice cream parlor on one side of the drugstore, the back part. And they had a jukebox there, and that's where a lot of the kids went and listened to music and dance. And that's about it, you know. That's where most of the kids hung out. There wasn't much of anything to do except go to the ice rink over by the school and stuff like that.
Did you like to ice skate?
Yeah, and then they had they put up a big sheet on the side of the building and showed movies after a while.
Oh.
And I can remember going to that.
You mean outside? No kidding.
And I don't remember who showed the movies or anything, but I remember going. And
that would have been on the brick building, the new school.
The old school. Well, I'd be the first school that they built. You know, across from the. What was it? I went to school in.
Well, you were born in 26.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So you were 5 years old when they built the new brick when it was built.
But
in 1931.
at one time we went to school across. They had a name for it, but I can't think of it. Some community building that we went to school in for a while.
Oh, the one that used to be the Methodist church?
No, I don't think so.
No? Masonic Temple?
It might have been. It was a temple or some kind of a big business building. And we went to school there, and then when they built the school, we moved across the
Oh,
down
okay.
the
Well,
street.
maybe I'm thinking too early.
I'm going Higgins Lake Road.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm all over the place.
Sure, that's okay.
But what was we working on here now?
Price of the building.
The Price Building, and then
Another restaurant, I guess.
White, W-H-I-T, White Restaurant. That I worked in that one too.
Did you? Was that for the Knights? Did they own it at that time?
I don't know. But they called it the White Restaurant. And then there was the bank. And that would probably,
That's on the corner.
that would be where we were coming, what was the name of Rutledge's Robinson or somebody lived across. There was another road here. And this was on a corner.
Well, that's Main Street now. This is Main
No,
Street.
we're going 144 yet.
Yeah, well, this is, 144, which is Lake Street.
Yeah, okay.
And now you've come at the bank. At the
Rutledge's wife's parents lived over here.
corner. No, you're a block too soon. This is where the Spruce Lodge is, the big hotel, the 2-story. Because the Opera House is over here. On this corner is, now it's called the Spruce Lodge, but it was called the Roscommon
Oh,
Hotel.
I know, it used to be a hotel.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I goofed up
you were a
here.
block too early, because Rutledge's, Helen's folks were another block down.
Okay, they live closer to Kylie's old
river,
place that
right.
you have. So now what did I do wrong here?
You didn't do anything wrong. You ran out of paper.
The
This
bank.
is the hotel, and then there was a Ford garage, or some kind of a garage before you came to the house that was Richardson's.
There was a garage
Brick
there.
house. Well, yeah, brick.
I remember the bank. Well, the garage must have been back on this street
It's on the
then.
other side of the hotel. If you're
Oh.
walking past the hotel towards the
Okay.
river, it'll be on that next block over.
That would have been the street probably that Knapp's lived
Yeah,
on.
that's by
Uh-huh.
6th Street, that's correct. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can remember a certain amount of that because I walked to work every
Sure.
day. You know.
Sure. And this was your,
That was my
that
dad's
was your
house.
dad's place.
And next to that, there was a little small house there that used to be, I think Cousin's built it, and
Oh.
this man by the name of Shoe, we called him the Shoe Man. Anyway, he fixed shoes and stuff
Oh.
like that.
Uh-huh.
A lot of people might remember him, but I don't remember him
He
anything.
did that right in his home?
Yeah, and then over here was Cousin. How do you spell Cousin?
Oh, I don't know, but
S-I-N-A-W or something. They had a good 13 children. It was built of stone, but I think they took that part of it off. They had a big dining room that was built with stone.
Oh,
The father was a stone man. He'd done mason work. And when I seen
Is that
that,
at the top of the hill? Is that the one at the
it was
very
going,
top?
yeah, on the top of the hill, going down. And Cousin Oz, and then my Uncle Bill. That was his house with Uncle Bill and
And Uncle Clyde.
Clyde. Bill and
There was
Clyde.
quite a Gardiner conclave there, wasn't there?
Yeah, and then down here, there was Henderson's. It's going down the hill, too. Henderson's, and they had quite a few kids, too. In fact, I went with one of the Henderson boys for a long time before, when we were still going to school. And then he got out of school, and he went overseas with my nephew, Bill, that got killed.
Oh.
And he came back, and there was another boy, too, but I can't think of his name right now. Nick something, Jack. He lost a leg. Oh, I'm missing somebody here on this one street. But maybe somebody else can fill that in. But
So this is how it was then in the early 1930s.
yeah, Hendersons were on there was a road.
Corner.
It was kind of a road, came from my brother lived over in here someplace. And across the street where this little road was, there was Cousins again.
Another cousin.
Oh, what was his name? It's funny that, what was his name? I can just remember them being there because I babysit for some of their kids. I can't remember his name. I remember Roger was one of the boys, but his name was...
Did you do a fair amount of babysitting?
Oh, yes. I even went out to Houghton Lake and babysit, and I got 50 cents an hour babysitting some of the big places out there until my dad wouldn't let me go back out there anymore.
How did you get there?
They came and got me, but my dad didn't like
At
the
Houghton
guy.
Lake or
Yeah,
Higgins Lake?
because Houghton Lake, no, at Higgins Lake, that's right. And they had a lot of big houses out there they rented out in the summertime, or either they owned them.
Did you go to Higgins Lake in the summer just to go swimming, or did you swim in the
Oh,
river?
yes, we swam in Houghton Lake and Higgins Lake both.
Did you?
My parents, my dad always, and my brothers went out there fishing and everything, you know.
Did you have a car when you were growing
And
up?
another thing, my dad, they took logs from Houghton Lake down through they called it the cutoff or something, where there was what do you call it? Shit, I can't think of it. Anyway, that's where they took the logs out of there, and my dad used to walk on logs on Houghton Lake. There were so many logs in the lake at that time.
Okay.
That's when they were taking them out of there. And they called it the cut. Anyway, it must have been in between Higgins Lake and Houghton Lake.
Yeah, the little river.
But
Did your father work for another lumber person, or did he do that on his own?
no, he done that. Yeah, I think he was taking his horse and his sleighs and taking them to the lumber yards. But I'm not sure
So,
about
like,
that.
he was in business for himself to do that.
I don't know. Somebody I forgot here someplace. It's just not right. You know, I'm forgetting too many things.
Well, that's okay. It's a pretty good idea of how things were.
You said something about somebody always whose cousin was anyway. Andersons. In fact, my Aunt Bernice built this house for my uncles. I don't know whether it's still there or not. There was a house in between Cousins and
Yeah, I don't
the
know.
corner. You don't know. You don't go down that street.
Well, I go down there. There aren't many houses left there anymore.
Okay. There was some people down closer to the water, you know, by Cousins. Like that would be going to Main Street too, because this is the other side.
That
And
little
there
stone
was a
stone house there?
stone house there, but I don't remember who it was. But my mother used to send me down there to get cream. She made butter, and she put it underneath in the ground, you know, to keep it good.
Your mother did?
No, my mother went down there to get her,
Oh, that lady did.
the butter. She liked the homemade butter,
Oh, how nice.
and that lady done it. And I can't think of her name either. And that was a stone building. I remember that was made of stone, and it was right on the water.
That's still there, right on the water.
It just
My
looks
uncles
like
were
I'm
there.
going wrong here. Oh, I see what I'm doing. This is from the hill going,
Going
Here.
towards town.
okay, Cousins, and then there was there's stone house. House, it's probably still there.
Yes, that one is still there.
And then there was the water. The bridge was in here someplace. There was a bridge. Okay, across the bridge was Kylie. That's Edith Kylie. She was related to, she married Jim. Edith Kylie's. You're probably wondering, how long is this going to take?
It's okay.
Anyway, I think we'd probably have to do this another time because then I would get mixed up with going the other way, like from Higgins Lake, Main Street and stuff
Well,
like
let's
that.
just talk about Let's talk about, I'll leave this here for you to work on if you'd like.
Kylie's said here, and then there was another street.
And then you come to George Street.
Is that what they called it?
Mhm.
George?
And then you come to the old houses there.
Yeah, and I don't know too many on that side
That
of the
was
street.
DeWale. DeWale was on the corner. And Johnson.
Where did I get DeWale? DeWale.
Well,
I had
there's
him
another
over here.
DeWale over here.
Well, I think that, was there another DeWale on that side?
Well, at one time the
Oh,
DeWales
I
owned
see.
it, but I don't know which DeWale. There were a couple of different DeWales.
Oh,
Charlie, that had the bank.
that's the one I was thinking about over here.
Oh, in this house? Okay, well, they could have moved around, I don't know.
DeWales, I thought, they had a house there,
One brother was a
and then
druggist,
the other one had the bank,
and one had the drugstore.
drugstore.
Yeah, so they were brothers, but I assume.
See, I didn't know how many kids they had or anything like that.
Maybe
It
they
just,
weren't brothers, I shouldn't assume that.
I don't know.
And then there was the stucco house that was Johnson's. But see, when you were there, it might have been somebody else's
Yeah.
name.
And when we got down to
And then
Main
Shepherd's.
Street,
And there was Shepherd's.
Shepherd's, I ran around with Edwin, a shepherd.
Did ya?
Yeah, her and I, they called us sisters. Her dad run a lumber yard,
Mm-hmm.
and her mother died of a disease of the blood. You know, at that time it was white corpuscles eating up the red ones. And they lived, boy, we're not in any place near where their house was.
No, it's a different, was Clarence and Salome Shepherd that lived
Oh,
there.
I see.
They lived there
So
from
that's not the
1920
ones
on.
that I knew then.
No, you're
They were way down the other side of where the hotel was and everything. There was another one. Yeah, I
That's okay, you did well with that. You did well with
you know, as far as I got was to where? The bridge.
George Street, yeah.
The bridge.
Yeah, the bridge there.
Maybe I can try to figure one out, you know, when you're not
okay.
here,
That's-
and I can
yeah,
think
sure.
closer.
That's pretty good,
Because
I'd
if
say.
I get to one thing and then I think of something else,
Yeah. Well, you said that they were showing movies sometime on the side
the back of the
building?
school, yeah, and then where was the school, and then what was beside the school? The courthouse?
Well, yeah. I was going to ask you if you remembered the Galma house there. Remember the Galma house?
What was that?
The boarding house? It was on the corner, until 1948, it was on the same corner with the school.
No, I remember an old people's home across the railroad tracks going up towards the highway department.
Oh,
It was kind of just around that corner on the left. And my mother used to tell us, don't go and bother those old people now because you don't go there, you know. But I would sit on the other side of the road and watch them, watch what was going on,
did you
of
realize?
course. Had my nose and
Like,
everything.
was it a two-story house, or what was it?
I remember it was an old building that they built onto the back, like my dad's house was that way when then he took that lean-to, they called it out, and built another part on our house. At that time, there was people there that I could go and do things for, and she'd say, do what you have to do. And I was getting paid for it. I don't know what I was getting paid, but I'd go in there, and that lady, I don't remember her name or her husband's name, but they took in old people and took care of them.
Like, they would have 3 or 4 old people?
Yeah,
Or
we had
more?
quite a few there, at least 6 or 7 people. And then I would do something for that lady, and then I would leave and go home. And my mother said, you just do your job and come back. You know? She told us we couldn't go around there and fool around. Because these people, I don't think, could get around at all. I think they were either bedridden or in wheelchairs. That's why I say I could go down the other street. Across from behind where Knapp's was, there was other streets and houses and stuff in there that I might be able to remember too. You know. And I know,
Raise the town.
and then going out toward Higgins Lake, you know, where the burial place is, you know, the graveyard.
Where cemetery?
Yeah. And there might be something in there that I might be able to think about too.
When you went to Higgins Lake, where did you go? Did you
We
go
had to
the
go
state
that
park?
way. We had to go past the courthouse and, what was the name of that road?
Well, it's County Road 100.
Oh.
What was then? But did you go to somebody's house or did you just go?
No, we went to the park, and a lot of the school stuff was at the park too.
At Gary's Park?
Yeah, Gary Sherry, the Houghton Lake. Now you can't even get in there, I don't think, anymore.
Oh, yeah, Gary's Park is
Okay,
still
yep.
there.
We used to go and swimming there in the summertime, and take a picnic lunch along.
Did your whole family go?
Well, mostly that was after I had divorced Mike,
Oh, when you
Myron,
were older.
and
You took
relatives
photos.
would come and take us in the car, and that's the only time we went out there is when somebody took us because we didn't have a car. But
When you were a child, did you swim in the river?
yep,
Yeah.
swimming hole, they called it, down behind, well, it would be on the other street, but that's the one I'm trying to remember. The one across the railroad tracks. We went to my grandma's house, and we went across the railroad tracks down the other way towards the river. And
Was that just North Street?
I don't know for sure. Anyway, we went there. We always had a hard time because the boys would go in swimming without no clothes on. And we wouldn't be able to go down there as long as we seen the boys in the water. We had to go back home. And but then,
First choice.
yeah. Anyway, if they were there, we didn't stay. And then when we'd go swimming and we'd put our clothes up on the bank, we had usually bathing suits, but they would come and take our clothes. I can remember that. But outside of that, I almost drowned a couple times in that lake, and one of the Kuzna boys saved my life.
In the lake or in the river?
In the river. It was more like a lake then, but when I went through Roscommon, there's hardly nothing left to it.
Yeah,
What happened?
I don't know. So when you were a youngster, it was a bigger river, wider?
It was, well, we called it the swimming hole because it was kind of, it had kind of a round spot in the middle and come from two different ways. I think there was two different branches of the Hasabo there. In fact, the Hasabo went down behind the school, where my brother lived. That would
They
be.
call that Robinson Creek.
Oh,
The
yeah.
Robinson
Okay,
Creek, yeah.
that's where my brother used to fish an awful lot.
Did you eat a lot of fish when you were
Oh,
growing up?
my mother was just crazy about fish out of the river. And,
Did you ever fish?
oh yeah, I fished, but then my brothers would go to Houghton Lake and get suckers, and they would smoke them, and then my mother would can them, make salmon out of them. She done a lot of canning. That's why I had to be home. She done so much, and she'd do so much, and then she'd go lay down.
Did the
She was sick.
Gardiners have a big garden?
Oh yeah, my dad did. I followed him around like nobody's business. I done everything with him. I helped him with his wood and stuff at night, And I had a lazy brother that wouldn't help. Walter didn't want to do anything.
So
But
you were the youngest of the family.
yes,
So you actually,
and I done an awful lot
You
for my
did.
dad and
So
mother.
yeah.
I enjoyed it. My dad built a chicken coop. He had chickens, and we had a horse at one time.
So of your brothers and sisters, when you were growing up, some of them were probably already married.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
Russell was married and gone to Detroit.
So your sister Beatrice grew up with you.
And she went to Detroit after, when she married Chance. Yeah. She didn't finish school. She only went to, she didn't finish school. She went about 6th grade, I think, and everybody had a hard time getting her to go to school. She'd hide in the bath, outside where they had the outside toilets.
Really?
In fact, we didn't have any lights until just before I left home. Electricity, yeah. But she'd hide in. She thought she was safe, I guess. She went in and we had a truant officer that came, and he would sit and wait for her to come out of there.
Okay.
She would get in trouble. So
Did you like school? You said you liked school.
I liked school. I went to the
Remember
9th
some
grade.
of your teachers?
Not really. I don't remember. I remember there was one principal that came up and tried to find out why I was missing so much school. And I can remember that guy. He was just a little short guy, and he walked up that road. He was going for his walk, I guess, or something. And he found out my mother was sick and all that, and then he didn't say any more to me about it. But I quit when I think I was 16. How old was I when I quit school? 16, I had to be. At that time, they had the law that you had to go until you were 16, I think. 9th grade. I passed, but I couldn't finish school.
So were you still in the group that had to take the 8th grade test before you could start the 9th grade? Did you do that?
I don't remember. I do remember going to school until I'm in the 9th grade. And as far as that goes, I've had 13 women under me at the Holiday Inn where I worked, and I was head housekeeper. I had to inspect 200 rooms over here, and now it's not the Holiday Inn anymore. But
Oh, here in Gaylord you
yeah,
did that?
And with a 9th grade education, a lot of the stuff I didn't know, and I had to do the girls' credit cards, you know, from work, where they punch in and punch out.
All their time cards?
Yeah, and I didn't know the point system at the time, you know, how to figure it out. And my daughter, one of my daughters, she was really a brain, you know. She's the one that's the air traffic controller now. And she took that course out of a book and passed it.
Wow.
And she's got one of the, I call her computer brain. And she helped me with that for a little while, and then finally I caught on to it. And she helped me, yeah.
Sure.
And I had to do anything I could, you know, to help take care of my kids. So I took the job, and I didn't really know what I was doing. I knew how to clean a room, but
Well, it all worked out, didn't
yeah, I started out cleaning rooms at $2.75 an hour
Now, when is that?
here in Gaylord.
So how long have you been here?
I've been here, well, I've been in this place right here for 13 years.
Oh, I mean, how long have you been in Gaylord?
Oh, gosh.
Well, you know, we left you in Minnesota after, so when did you come back from Minnesota?
Gosh, I can't remember.
Were your children already grown?
Most of them, yeah. Oh, I think I came back with Dwayne, yeah, that's right. I came back from Minnesota, and that's when we moved to, we lived in Roscommon for a while, and then we moved to Frederick, and then after him and I separated, we came up here well, we lived in Gaylord for a while. I'll take that back. We lived in Gaylord, and him and I separated. And we had an old house on Court Street here in town, which at the time we were buying it, you know, like you could pay for your rent, and you was buying it as you went along. And when him and I broke up, I didn't know it at the time, but we'd had papers signed that I could have kept the house if I wanted to. But I didn't know that, and he pulled a fast one on me there. But then we were living on Court Street. Then I went to a farm home, and I had a house built out here, about 2 miles out of town.
And how many, you still have children at
And
home?
all my kids graduated. The girls all graduated, and Pete graduated from Gaylord. So they all
So you've been
graduated.
there quite some time.
Yeah, but I can't remember exactly when we moved back.
Well, that's okay, because I recall that we left you in Minnesota before children were born.
Yeah, they were all born in Minnesota, but then we moved back here. We moved back when my youngest daughter, I had her when I was 40 years old. I remember writing to my sister and telling her life begins at 40, you know, and I got pregnant. But outside of that, I suppose this is about as far as we can go today.
Yeah, well, I think we did quite
I think
well.
I'm running down.
Sure, okay, well, we did very well, I think.
But you're not going to be coming back again for
I'm
until...
going to come back to bring some pictures back.
Oh, okay. You don't know
Okay,
when,
well-
though. You'll let me know, huh? You want...